All right, everyone, welcome back into another NFL DFS video. Going to be getting into the Week 3 lineup builder video, which is going to be the first time I've had this video for 2025. So what we cover in this video is going to be all my favorite stacks, my core plays, my cash lineup as it sits right now. Then we're going to go ahead and also get into pivots from the chalk and maybe which players we could be fading due to the chalk, and then touching on some of my favorite GPP builds. Now, this is stuff that will change even up until lineup lock as well, based off of some of the information that we get. And I think actually a good reason I can show you kind of why that is looking at Kenneth Walker, who is now chalk after we got news that Zach Charbonnet is going to be out for or likely to sit in Week 3. So yes, guys, Kenneth Walker is now a chalky, okay? And he probably should be. But I'm also going to say, I don't know if he's necessarily a lock to go off, okay? Everyone is expecting him to get a lot more work. That is what the data is projecting as well. So he's projected to get 21 opportunities in a game that they are projected to win by 7.5 points. That is always going to be someone that we should consider more of a core play, especially at such a cheap price tag. Value-wise, he is projected to be the best value on the slate. But so is Jordan Mason, who is also chalk, and I do think we have some natural pivots off of both of those two plays. Now, that's not to say that I don't think they are good chalk, but it's also to say that I do think there's a path where neither of them are in the optimal GPP build. For cash considerations, it is more difficult to get away from them, although the matchup with the Saints is not like a lock and load matchup by any means. Okay, yeah, so let's go ahead and just take a peek at Zach Charbonnet. We kind of know the drill, though. It's like when one of these two are out, we are typically going with the other one, and that probably will be the case in this game as well, but the Seahawks have been very hestant to give Kenneth Walker a heavy workload. He is clearly a better talent than Zach Charbonnet, even though in Week 1, that is not exactly what happened, like stat-wise. But then when you watch the film, you kind of just see Zach Charbonnet had more room to run, and Kenneth Walker just didn't have that. And then Week 2 happens where Kenneth Walker just looked much better than him. And so I'm kind of looking at that, and especially throughout the preseason and camp, where they're giving him like a day on a practice and a day off of practice, they might just be hesitant to give him a heavy workload. Now, although I do think there's a good chance he gets like 70% of the opportunities, maybe someone like George Holani, who I don't necessarily think is a big drop-off to Zach Charbonnet. Like I would say the talent difference between Holani to Charbonnet is less than the difference between Walker, peak Walker, healthy Walker compared to Zach Charbonnet. Now, a lot of people are going to think that's a hot take. And to be fair, my opinion on that is based off a preseason film, which can be pretty biased just because the talent level is different. And that's more me saying that Zach Charbonnet has been overrated. And obviously I'm more saying that to get to a point that I do think that it could be more of a 70-30 split, maybe even a 35-65 split. That being said, we do still want to play Kenneth Walker at this point. Chalk-wise, I do think it makes sense, but who is a pivot off of him? Well, the obviously natural pivot would be the other chalk running back play, like I already mentioned, which is Jordan Mason. Now, Jordan Mason, we already have a pivot off of him naturally as well, just on his same team. Another value that is great, that is also a pivot off of another chalky player. Okay, Carson Wentz. Let's just talk about that. Okay, guys, and stay with me here, okay? We are going to bounce around a little bit. So Marcus Mariota is extreme chalk right now. He is projected to get 4x value. Then you look at someone like Carson Wentz. He is a fourth of the ownership of Marcus Mariota. And Carson Wentz gets a slightly better matchup as well. I actually think the Raiders DST is one of the better plays. And so we have two direct pivots just by playing Carson Wentz at the quarterback position. One, it's a pivot off of Jordan Mason. Okay, we know Carson Wentz can kind of get those 1-yard rushing touchdowns if he needs to do a QB sneak or something like that. That wouldn't be surprising. And I do think that this is actually a slight upgrade from, well, I shouldn't say, we don't know that for sure. It could be a slight upgrade from J.J. McCarthy. If anything, it's going to be the same outcome as J.J. McCarthy. And you could argue that if the offense isn't improved, then Jordan Mason isn't all going to be that great anyways. Okay? Again, I do think Jordan Mason is a good play, and I do think Kenneth Walker is a good play as well. But just naturally speaking, a direct pivot off of both Mariota and Jordan Mason is to go to a not chalky Carson Wentz, who is projected to, almost go for 4x as well. Okay, so not every slate is always created equal in terms of like what we can do with ownership. That does seem like a good move to get to Wentz in some GPP pivots. And so if we're like trying to make a cash build while also talking about like fades and pivots, that's what we're going to do throughout this video. So let's go ahead and take a peek at the next kind of chalky option as well, RB wise, running back wise. So it goes Jordan Mason, then CMC. I've kind of already mentioned how I'm a little bit hesitant to get to CMC. I like Jonathan Taylor much better than him. I think that's just a better play just in general. The projection data does not necessarily agree with me, and that's probably why CMC is much higher in terms of ownership. Okay. I just think game flow wise, I think the Colts should be able to beat the Titans, and I think Jonathan Taylor workload wise is a little bit more desirable for me, especially considering the price tag, right? That's $1,000 difference, and I think it's going to be a toss up between which one of those two go off. And I would also prefer Bijan Robinson over CMC as well. Again, considering price tag, the $300 is enough for me to like Bijan Robinson a little bit more. But who's not popping up as a chalky option that is also priced pretty cheaply? Javonte Williams. You could argue Tony Pollard as well, but Javonte Williams, who does get a great matchup going against the Chicago Bears, a team that has struggled to stop opposing running backs just in general. Javonte Williams projected to get around 18 opportunities in this game. Okay, and he's not that chalky. Like, he's 12% owned. And so he is already a decent pivot off of both Jordan Mason and Kenneth Walker. And he gets a good matchup. And he's going to get a heavy workload. Now, he is priced higher, and that is a difference maker. I understand that. But you can naturally just go Carson Wentz and Javonte Williams, and you're already getting pretty different than the field there. And then you could start to go pretty chalky. Now, I said this a decent amount already this week, and I think people are naturally probably agreeing with this take as well, is that Dak Prescott, to me, is actually one of the better quarterback plays on the slate. Although I do think, given the fact that Mariota and Wentz are min-priced, we should just be going with those two. But Dak would have been like my core play of the week had we not gotten those cheap values that we are getting. And that would create a conundrum if we were also trying to play Javonte Williams as well. And so that's kind of the decision-making points of this week, ownership-wise, guys. That's where we have to make some decisions. Do you go with Dak and like CeeDee Lamb, get that easy game stack? Maybe run it back with Rome Odunze or DJ Moore, or have George Pickens in there as well? I think that's not a terrible route to go as well. So with that, let's actually go ahead and get into some of my favorite GPP stacks as well. All right, guys, so to show you my favorite GPP stacks, we're just going to use the 9-to-5 lineup builder. We're on the main slate right now. And really what we're going to do is we're just going to configure the stacks. Now, naturally speaking, I force a QB stack with pass catcher. So it's either tight end or receiver, but we can also do groups. I like to do groups more than the stacks, just because it really depends on how many lineups you're making. Once you start to do too many stacks, the lineup builder just naturally takes a while to process. And so I like to do it with groups because it allows the data to kind of work around what you're saying easier. And so what I mean by this is, let's talk about Dak. So I mentioned I like Dak Prescott as a stacking opportunity. Okay. And I want to say I want at least probably two of these players in a Dak Prescott lineup. Okay. And so, well, who are those players that I want to stack them with? Well, obviously CeeDee Lamb. Okay, CeeDee Lamb is going to be a phenomenal option. And then George Pickens as well. If we're going to be chasing that game against the Bears, which is the highest projected scoring game on the slate, we want to begin into some of the pass catchers there. That being said, if we are doing that, I do think we want to run it back with either DJ Moore or also Rome Odunze. I think this game has a decent chance to end up being a shootout. Okay, and so that's kind of the route I'm going as it currently sits right now. We could bump this up to at least 3 as well, but I think for now we're good with adding that group. And so this whole in percent of builds would be based off your max exposure. So I would say I think I'm probably good getting to 15% of Dak if that's what we're kind of wanting it to do. And so those 15% of those builds, we're going to get to at least 2 of those players. So I'm going to add that group. Now, I also would agree that Caleb Williams is a great GPP option as well. Now, his performance on the field has been pretty spotty, but at the same time, he does hold upside. He does rush the football. So we do want to get into that as well. So I'll get to at least 2 of his players as well. Okay, Rome Odunze and DJ Moore. And the nice thing about this, guys, is by forcing a QB stack with a pass catcher, we're already telling it that we're going to get to one of those Bears players. And then it just becomes, does it want to run it back with a Dallas player or a Chicago Bears player? And so CeeDee Lamb and then George Pickens there as well. I'm going to add this in about 5% of builds. Nothing too crazy, but I do like that. And then one other thing I want to do as well while we're here, because I do really like the running back plays that we have on the slate. So if you guys watched my core plays video, I really said we had 5 really good running back plays. And that was our issue with the slate, was to decide between those 5 running back plays and kind of which lineups we wanted to go with, because we are getting a decent receiver value play as well. So let's talk about the core plays that I kind of have at the running back position. Okay, so that's going to be Kenneth Walker now. He's the player that I'm adding in there. That's the add-on. just due to that Zach Charbonnet news. We also have Jordan Mason still. I think price tag wise, we should be getting to him. And then I already mentioned Javonte Williams in this video as well. Okay, so I like Javonte Williams. Again, given the matchup that he has, I think that's a very appealing play there as well. And so from there, who are the other running backs that I like as well? Well, you guys probably already know it. Bijan Robinson, as I already mentioned, gets a good matchup against the Panthers. Really like his price tag. And then I do still feel Jonathan Taylor as a player we can easily pay up for. And so I think what I'm going to do in the lineup builder is tell it that I want at least 2 or 1 of those players. But I do got to call it, Alvin Kamara is at a very cheap price tag as well. He could be someone that ends up being a pretty good pivot off of the chalk. He should have a high floor in this matchup against the Seahawks, a team that has given up a lot of production to opposing running backs in the passing game. Okay, and I know the spread on this game is pretty bad. That is a concern. But last week, guys, he was able to go for 17, even in a game where they were playing from behind. Not for I guess for most of it. They probably should have won that game. I mean, they could be 2-0. Okay, so they're not as bad as I think people think, and their defense is not terrible as well. But to get back to that point, what we're going to do here is, all right, I might add in like a drop down to us that says exactly where you can tell it I want this many players in all my builds, but at least we're going to do 2, okay? And we're just going to put all those players in there. Now, notice I'm not going to have this clicked. I'm just going to go to select players that I want. So, again, Robinson, you could toss in CMC to this mix. I don't hate that idea as well, just as an FYI. But yeah, we're going to do Kenneth Walker as well. Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, Jordan Mason, Javonte Williams. And then I could toss in, and I don't hate the idea of doing it as well, CMC and also Alvin Kamara. Okay, so we want, I know it's a lot, 7 players, but if we can tell it that we want to get to those running backs as our running back plays, at least, I'm okay with doing that. So we'll click save there. Now, are there any other stacks that I want to be going out of my way to target specifically? Honestly, not really, because I could kind of poke holes in some of the other like direct stacks that we'd want to be going out of our way to target, other than what will naturally happen when we are telling the data to stack it with either a receiver or a tight end. Okay. So now another step that I'm going to do just to ensure that we're getting these stacks is we can do 2 things. One, we could just raise up the projection for a quarterback. Like, so say we really like, the Williams, we could raise it up even more, or we could just do min % exposure. Okay, 5%. Okay. Also probably going to cap it though at 15, just as an FY. Dak Prescott as well. Again, I really like him. I do want to get to about 10% of Dak, but let's limit him to about 25. Okay. And with Dak, I am going to actually raise him above a lot of the players because I do think he's going to end up being a good option. Now, that being said, I do think we need to get to Carson Wentz and also Marcus Mariota a decent amount. Okay, so Marcus Mariota, we are going to cap at about 25%. And same thing here with Carson Wentz, 25%. But because I like Wentz a little bit more than I do Marcus Mariota, I'm going to bump Carson Wentz up to 16.5. I'm also going to drop Mariota down a little bit to 17. Okay, I'm going to ensure that I'm going to get to about 10% of both of them as well. Okay, so if you're doing 20 lineups, that is overkill. Okay, this works better once you're starting to tell it everything with 150 lineups. So when you're doing 20 lineups, you're honestly almost better. I don't want to say better off doing it by hand, but you are able to manipulate your lineups a little bit better based off of what you're trying to tell it to do. Based off of what you want to do. Whereas when you're doing 150 lineups, this is definitely the best route to go. Now, before we go ahead and run anything, I do want to talk about some values that I like. So like Hunter Renfrow, guys, to me, is someone that could almost be a core play. I think he's going to do much better than what he's projected to get right now. So I'm going to bump him up to 9.5, and I'm going to tell the lineup builder I want at least like 7% of him. We could even bump that up to 12, okay? I think he's going to have a good game, so I want to go out of my way to target him. He is too cheap to me. And then I do also think Matthew Golden could have a big game in him. I don't think we should go crazy with that, but maybe we get to about like 2%, like nothing too crazy. Directly telling the lineup builder, though, that I want to get to him. And then tight end wise, if you guys followed my coverage this week, you know that I was talking up Jawan Johnson a decent amount, okay? And so I'm just going to bump him up a little bit as well because I think he's going to have a good game and I want to go out of my way to target him. So let's get about 20% of him. We'll cap his exposure at about 40%. Now I'm going to do a max exposure about 46%. Doesn't really matter all too much, but we're going to go ahead and run it and kind of see what it's spitting out to us. Before we do that, we have to clear some of the filters though that we have on this, or else it won't run. And now, just as an FYI, if you guys are a 9to5 member and are using this, it can take a little bit to process, like up to 3 minutes sometimes, and that's a little bit intentional because I have wanted to keep the membership lower. It's kind of like a sacrifice that we're making to keep the membership at $10 a month rather than raising it to like $40 a month for those operating costs. So it might say like wait. If you guys are using it, click wait. It will eventually work. And so while that's loading, I want to go ahead and kind of just cover what I'm thinking about then for a cash lineup. Okay, I actually think you could still get away with playing Carson Wentz as a pivot off of Marcus Mariota, just given the fact that Mariota's chalked. The chances are they're both going to end up playing well. Okay, and that's just like a unique pivot that you can make where if Mariota doesn't do well and Wentz does do well, like you're getting a big edge on the field, and chances are they're going to produce about the same. But again, then you probably aren't playing Jordan Mason. I think that's the biggest reason as to why we are seeing the difference in terms of the ownership. People are playing Jordan Mason, so they're not playing Wentz. And so again, that's where in GPPs, you can simply just get away with playing Wentz instead of Mason, and then also Mariota, obviously, and then you're gaining a big edge on the field. All right, so this is kind of what a cash lineup could end up looking like this week. Okay, now the issue that we have, and this is just me kind of showing you guys the highest owned players on the slate, and so this is kind of the issue on the slate, is that we can make a pretty darn good lineup while having 1,500 left over. Okay, some people might see that I'm playing Mariota and then Raiders DST. I actually think that's a good move. Okay, they are both cheap, and although we think Mariota can 3x pretty easily, I also think that the Raiders DST is going to be serviceable. They're the lowest price DST that I feel comfortable will be able to go positive, but also probably give us back a decent return, like a 2x return there. So I think they're a solid play. So again, here is the issue. We have way too much salary left over, even though this lineup is pretty great, right? And what do we do here? Honestly, I don't know. This is the difficult part. We have a clearly good lineup here, a high target share between CeeDee Lamb, Puka Nacua, Rome Odunze, and Juwan Johnson. We also have probably 60 opportunities between Kenneth Walker, Jordan Mason, and Javonte Williams as well. We could pay up at quarterback, but I can't get up to Dak Prescott, which is what I would want to do. Even Caleb Williams, I'd be more inclined to play that build. So we can't. Okay, so Marcus Mariota's in there still. Okay, maybe we get off of Javonte simply because we are playing CeeDee Lamb, and that is where we can still play Jonathan Taylor. Okay, this is kind of what I settled on right now, but it's probably going to change as well, just as an FYI, because again, there's just so many differentiations that we can make. Although this is a good one, it's a chalky option, but a very logical option as well. And I almost wish we had, I mean, you could try to get to Jamar Chase, I guess, but I almost wish we had another stud receiver that we felt very confident was going to go off. All right, so let's go ahead and take a peek at kind of what it spit out to us as the lineups. Okay, so we got Juwan Johnson, 40%, Bijan Robinson, 40%. Did get to Kenneth Walker, probably more than I would like, 40%, about CMC, 37%. Again, I like Jonathan Taylor more, although he's still at 26%, so that's fine with me there as well. The one player I'm noticing isn't owned that much, which to me tells me I'm going to need to bump up his own fantasy projection a little bit, is Javonte Williams. Again, I mentioned I liked him a bunch, and so he's a player that we're going to need to go out of our way to target a little bit there as well. Let's go ahead and take a peek at some of the better lineups that we are getting. And guys, I am working on a way to sort the chart here by the top lineups and by the top ownership percents as well. So we could click on it like that. It does seem like the general builds are going to be around 130-ish, 125 to like 130-ish. Okay, so like this lineup is one of the higher ones. Wentz, Walker, Mason, Jefferson, JSN, Olave, interesting, Trey McBride, Puka. Now let's just see kind of a Caleb Williams build as well. So Caleb Williams, Robinson, Walker, CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown. I don't necessarily like that, but kind of I mean, that's why we're doing 150 lineups, right? to get to some players that we don't like necessarily, and it wouldn't be surprising to see him have a good game. But overall, pretty darn solid build there as well. So you guys get the point of kind of what we're looking at when we are using that lineup builder. And I think this was kind of a quicker and easier video for you guys to go over, you know, again, some of my favorite stacks, some of my thoughts for ownerships and pivots we can be on. No real fades, I would say, this week in general. I think, you know, the players that are high owned make sense. Then I give you guys kind of my core plays already. Running back wise, CeeDee Lamb core play, Juwan Johnson core play, as well as receiver, tight end. So that, I think that pretty much covers week 3. If you guys have any thoughts, let us know those in the comment section below. If you guys would like access to any of the tools that you saw in this video, I showed you guys the DraftKings cheat sheet, and as well as the NFL lineup builder as well. All those tools are available for a low monthly cost of $10 a month. So you guys can get access to all that for a low monthly cost, again, of $10 a month. Visit 9to5sports.com to get access to that. Thank you guys for watching. Good luck. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and as always, let's keep cashing.